So, hello everyone. We are just waiting a few more minutes that people can come into the webinar. Okay. Welcome everyone to the second part on the omission on adaptation lunchtime on the Risk Data Hub. Today we will look in the details on disaster losses and damage dashboard. My name is Thomas Dvorak. I'm part of the mission implementation team and I will be your moderator today. I'm happy that you use your Friday lunch break to join us and to see what the GRC has prepared so far. Before we go into the presentation and I will introduce you to the speakers, a couple of housekeeping rules. Either use the question and answer function to ask the speakers about any questions you have about the content or the hub, or use the chat function as well, and you can also share additional information or other things in the chat. I will read through both functions through, and I will forward the questions to the speakers, not always in the order they come in, but probably in the way they make sense. And in the overall the overall question behind this presentation is not only to provide you insights on the hub itself, but also what do you think about it. And in this context, we have prepared a couple of questions in the Slido format, which we kindly ask you to answer. The link will be in the chat, and the first question we will have is basically where you come from in terms of what is your organization you're representing, and yeah, where what is your background. So you should see now the link, or the link is in the chat. So you can basically start voting, please. And that gives us a better feeling on what audience we have. It's interesting because yesterday the science community were by far the most. At the moment now it's changing. Okay. So basically we have a similar picture as yesterday, even if there are less attendances. Yeah, okay, almost 50% are, or 50% are coming from the science institution, and 22, around 20% are from the regional authorities on the charter signatories, and the rest are businesses, others, friends of the mission, NGOs. Okay, I think we can go now to the content. I'm really happy to introduce to you three colleagues from GRC. Those of you who have been with us yesterday know already Gustav, who will give the overall presentation, and then we get some practical experience and live demos from Christos and Samuel. A very warm welcome to you. Thanks for being available and presenting this really, well, I would say important tool now, because we got the answers from yesterday that makes a difference in policy making probably, and it's quite useful. So Gustav, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us as well. I will start sharing my screen just to make sure everything's working fine. Okay. Everything's good. Thomas, on your side, yeah, you can see it?
Yep, the presentation
Yes.
mode is.
Thank you very much. So today I will present together with my colleagues Christos and Samuel. We'll come in a bit later. So I will start with a general presentation, a bit about where we come from, the JRC, and also where we are placed within our organization. And then some really quick notes on our system, the Risk Data Hub, and then Christos and Samuel will go into detail on two aspects of our Risk Data Hub. So we are from the Joint Research Center. So we are placed in Ispra in Italy, but there are also facilities in Sevilla, in Spain. There's in Karlsruhe in Germany, Brussels, of course, where the headquarters is, Geel, Belgium, and also in Petten in Holland. So the JRC is basically placed under the Commissioner Iliana Ivanova, who is the Commissioner for Innovation, Research and Culture, Education and Youth. And basically it's comprised of a strategy of coordination, knowledge production, knowledge management, and of course support to different directorates. And basically we've been for over 60 years working scientifically and building our expertise. So next slide. Sorry. So this is some facts and figures very, very briefly about 380 million in annual budget, 2,800 staff, 50 large-scale research facilities, and so on. The biggest site of the JRC is in Ispra, where we are right now. So what do we do in the Joint Research Center? So basically, we provide independent, evidence-based knowledge and science. So we support EU policy in this world, especially. We're trying to move as well beyond knowledge production to include knowledge management and making sense of the data. So we have the mission statement is based on three very important concepts, which is anticipation. So anticipate, where we look ahead to see more clearly what's coming at us and be better prepared and react more efficiently to new challenges. Second one is integrate, so connecting the dots and disentangling crossovers thanks to multidisciplinary analytical capability. Finally, impact, so we measure the impact of EU policies, support the design and monitoring of policies and performance indicators. So the JRC offers scientific excellence, anticipation of new challenges, opportunities, and also the capacity to map, review, analyze, and synthesize the best available evidence in support of EU policies. I will also add today that the values of the JRC are very important to us, and also especially for our group as well. And the three main concepts in the three values we have in our core is trust, transparency, and collaboration. So I will be brief on this picture. Of course, it's self-evident, maybe a vast amount of information from different locations. You get many different sources, such as regional, national authorities, universities, NGOs, industry, experts, databases. We need to manage the information in somehow. So basically, the added value of the JRC is to perform this kind of tasks through the expertise we have and the development of knowledge management procedures. So that, as I said before, includes making sense of the data, filtering, and visualizing it. So to do this, basically, we have set up a number of knowledge centers. We are the Knowledge Center for Disaster Risk Management, or DRMKC. There are also several others, as you can see. We also have a set of competence centers which support the knowledge center sometimes in different aspects of the work. And basically, knowledge centers are trying to bring together experts and knowledge from different locations inside and outside the European Commission. And the job is obviously to inform policymakers in a transparent, tailored, and concise manner about the status and findings of the latest scientific evidence, basically. So I will go right away into our knowledge center, which is the Disaster Risk Management Knowledge Center, so the DRMKC. You will see the link in the presentation, in the slide, but I think this is going to be shared as well in the chat by our colleagues. The DRMKC is the oldest and first knowledge center which was created in the European Commission to enhance knowledge base in the field of disaster risk management, and is acting as an interface between science and policy making. The creation of it was specifically triggered by the evolving policy context, and that goes back to the creation of the new Union Civil Protection Mechanism, so the UCPM, which emphasized the need to improve the knowledge base on disaster risks overall. And obviously, this was in 2015, I believe, and we have developed over time. And the activities of the DRMKC have been progressively shaped with the 2009 and 2019, I'm sorry, and the 2021 revisions of the UCPM. The last one, which created a knowledge network, bringing together civil protection and disaster management experts and organizations. And we are at the core of the science pillar of the UCPM knowledge network. So our knowledge center have 3 pillars, as you can see in the, they're not pillars, but it's not the kind of structure we're looking at. But there are 3 pillars that underpin our work. So it's partnership, where we try to build networks with scientific communities and operational actors, member states and participating states of the UCPM, within and outside the EU, to transfer the science into policy. The second one is knowledge, where we identify the needs and then we integrate knowledge, consolidate it, and share it across different sectors. And finally, innovation, where we co-develop innovative solutions for the mitigation of disasters and their impacts. So this is Risk Data Hub, for example. So next slide, I will just mention briefly the main activities that we do in the DRMKC. So it's knowledge management activities. We also do systems, models, and platforms and data repositories. We do knowledge sharing, capacity development, and outreach activities. A couple of examples which you will see if you go on our website is, for example, we have the DRMKC Project Explorer, which is continuously updated with information regarding research projects and institutions. And we think it's an essential tool to discover who knows what in this area of DRM, basically. So the Project Explorer, it allows the identification and visualization of networks, and it eases the discovery of synergies across different research funding instruments, basically. We also have the Gaps Explorer, which you see down at the bottom, which actually provides a targeted recommendation, or provides targeted recommendations, and is tailored to different stakeholders. So you can choose if you're a policymaker, a practitioner, or a scientist, and based on that, you will see different parts of the Gaps Explorer. This was a pilot case for forest fires, which is the only one we have so far, but we might have more in the future. So that's all worthwhile having a look at that as well. Finally, a couple of platforms that we have. So we have the Index for Risk Management, or INFORM, which is it's an index which is a quantitative assessment of the risk of humanitarian crisis in a multi-hazard context, with a major focus on developing countries. So that's outside of Europe, mainly it's global, to be honest. And then we have the Global Conflict Risk Index, or GCRI, which expresses the statistical risk of violent conflict in a given country in the coming 1 to 4 years. And it's exclusively based on quantitative indicators from open sources. And finally, we have the Risk Data Hub. So this is the first slide. I will just move on from this one and present the team. So I'm Gustav presenting now, and my colleague Christosen and Samuel will take over afterwards. We also have Andrea Sibiglia, a data scientist, and 2 developers, Davide Rodomont and Sandro Salari. So you can contact any one of us if you want. Our email addresses is basically name.surname@ec.europa.eu. But on the website, we also have the functional mailbox indicated if you want to send us a mail. So what is the Risk Data Hub? It's a data hub for pan-European risk and disaster loss data. So basically, it's a website, but it's also a call for collaboration. We need this work together with you to be able to develop in a better way. We host and we share disaster risk and loss data at pan-European level, and we improve access to the data. So that goes back to the transparency, which is a core value of the JRC. We also host data and results from different research projects around Europe. So that goes to the collaboration. And it's also a platform to share information on risk and losses. So we try to share insights on losses, on hazard, on exposure and vulnerabilities. And we compute probabilistic risk for Europe. We also try to provide information regarding the methodologies for risk calculation. And obviously, transparency and collaboration are key to this, and we believe that those two in themselves lead to trust. Next slide, disaster risk. So disaster risk is for us a function of hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. And you see a nice little picture here. I will move right away to the next slide, actually, because today we're going to speak about the hazard and exposure later. The vulnerability was addressed yesterday. But very, very briefly, before I leave it to the colleagues, basically the hazard and exposure parts, you see I will focus on the picture instead of the text. The first picture on the left, you will see the elements at risk. So that's the exposed asset. It could be buildings, it can be population, it could be something else. It could be critical infrastructure, for example. The second is the hazard footprint. So this is the extent of a certain hazard, let's say floods or earthquakes. And the third step, basically, you a GIS map overlay, and you will see what assets are in what hazard footprint. And that's the first step towards doing a risk assessment. So next slide is on the vulnerability, very, very briefly, which was discussed yesterday with some of the colleagues here. Basically, the characteristics determined by physical, social, economic, political, environmental factors or processes which increase the susceptibility of an individual, a community, or an asset or a system to the impact of a hazard. So basically, if you have an exposed asset, you have a hazard, and then you have to define the vulnerability. And with those three components, you can compute the risk. This is a screenshot of our vulnerability dashboards, which Andrea presented yesterday. So go have a look at that. We computed at different levels in different dimension. It's an index. So we have the all dimension mentions before, but also we go down to NUTS 3 level, so provincial level with our assessment, but also at NUTS 2 level and also the country level. So final slide. It's just to show you that we also host we host results from external projects and internal projects. So this is the PESETA 4. The series of PESETA projects is the projection of economic impacts of climate change in sectors of the European Union based on bottom-up analysis. The projects which was done by the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, it aims to reduce the knowledge gap on climate change impacts and adaptation. So the impacts that you will see on our website on the platform are estimated for the warming target set out in the Paris Agreement, so 1.5, 2 degrees, as well as higher level of warming up to 3 degrees. So go and have a look at that if you're interested. And I think that's it from my side. I will leave over to Christos, but please feel free later to get back to me with questions on what you saw this morning, what you saw this day in my presentation, I'm sorry. And with that, I think I will stop sharing my screen and leave it to Christos to take over. Thank you.
Hello from my side as well. I'll be giving you a quick overview of the data viewer plus a live demonstration in the end. Please let me know if there is anything wrong with me sharing my screen. So first of all, what motivated us to create the data viewer? It was first and foremost to be transparent with our work in the Risk Data Hub, to expose the data that we use for risk calculation. We also wanted to facilitate the access to the users, since there is a wide availability of geospatial datasets online, but these are scattered across different platforms and sources, which might prove to be time-consuming for most users. And also, we wanted to highlight the sources that we consider that produce reliable and scientifically robust data, such as the one that are produced in the Joint Research Center, where we can be sure of the high quality of the data. And of course, we can have a communication with the experts that are producing this data, since these are in our unit. So the main characteristics of the data viewer is that basically it's a hub of disaster risk related data. These are Europe-wide open geospatial datasets. We do not work with commercial datasets. It's an easy to access and easy to use platform. There's no need to log in. You can simply use it from our website. And the information, the data that we have on our platform, these are described in a standardized and detailed way. So users can learn about the format, the extent, or any other kind of information about the data themselves. As my colleague Gustav mentioned earlier, this is how we define risk. So the data viewer is focusing on 2 out of the 3 risk components, specifically the hazard and the exposure. I'll briefly go through those 2 terms. So overall, there are different definitions of how one can approach the hazard. Here in the Risk Data Hub, we are using a probabilistic approach, which, as the name suggests, is basically is expressed in a probability of different disaster events occurring at a specific level of intensity within a specific time frame. It's not the only approach, but this is the one that the Risk Data Hub has adopted. One key metric about probabilistic hazard is return periods. So these indicate basically how often we can expect some events, some disaster events like floods or earthquakes or whatever of a specific intensity to happen. So you will often hear or see in the layers that we have in our data viewer the term 10-year return period or 100 or 200, 500. This doesn't mean that, say, for example, if 10-year return period flood will occur every 10 years, but it may happen several times within that period, or it may not happen at all. That is a common misunderstanding, so it's an important point to remember. Then with regards to exposure, this, as Gustav mentioned earlier, this is identified through the overlay between the hazard footprint and the assets that users would be interested in. This can be, for example, residential buildings or commercial buildings, population, or specific infrastructure. And just to give you again a visual example of what I just said, here, for example, we have a map over Hamburg, and this is the population, the number of individuals within a certain grid. And by overlaying the flood extent or the hazard footprint, we can see which of these areas would be affected in case of a hazardous event such as this one. Then with regards to data availability, so far in the data viewer, we have 7 different hazard types. So landslide, earthquakes, wildfires, windstorms, coastal and river floods, and tsunamis. And with regards to exposure, we have residential buildings, commercial buildings, and population. I want to emphasize that the data viewer has been released exactly 2 weeks ago. So that is what is included in version 1. But this is in development. We are committed to continue adding new hazard types and, of course, updating to the latest available data of the existing hazard types that we have. And of course, we will be adding new features, such as tools or widgets, as I'll show you later on. And also want to highlight that we really want to listen to the feedback from you, from the users, since this will help us create something that is going to be more useful for you and will definitely be important for us. So please let us know your opinion and send us your feedback whenever that's possible. Then finally, I just wanted to mention that how to access the data viewer. One way is obviously through our website, which I will show you in a few moments. And then the second way is for some more advanced users is that you can take advantage of the geospatial web services we offer. Specifically, we have a WMS server that we also published recently. And with this WMS server, you can basically take all the layers that are being displayed on the data viewer, and you can link it to your own GIS software. You can mix and match with your own layers. You can remove some of the layers that are not interesting for you and keep the ones that you think that are useful. And Now I will switch to our website. So this is the homepage of the Risk Data Hub. If you want to access the data viewer, you can navigate through the menu on top, specifically the submenu Risk RDH data. You can click on the data viewer or the Geospatial Web Services, which is the page where I just mentioned before. Otherwise, you can scroll down on this tile here, data, and then select data viewer. Before I show you the data viewer, just very quickly to show you how this page looks like, the Geospatial Web Services. Here we have the detailed instructions. There's a PDF which you can download. That includes step-by-step instructions on how to connect to our WMS server and use the layers that are also displayed on the data viewer. Back on the data viewer, so this is what the homepage of the data viewer looks like. Here in the center, we have this window where you will be able to follow the progress of the data viewer when new releases come out, which the next one is actually planned to be very soon. You will be able to see what we updated exactly, so you can notice the differences directly. So the data viewer itself, as I mentioned, is relatively easy to use and straightforward. Here in the upper left, we have the buttons to navigate over the map. You can zoom in, zoom out, you can go back to the default extent. On the upper right, you have a button to search specific location, like a country or a specific municipality or a region. In addition to that, you also have the option of changing the base map. The default one is the one that I have right now, but you can switch to any other base map from this list here. For example, you may have something that includes satellite imagery as a base map. Furthermore, on the left, you will see the layers themselves, which these are split between the different hazard types, like the ones I mentioned before, and exposure is in its own group of layers. Again, the ones I mentioned, population and buildings. And we also have some auxiliary data sets. For now, we have only land cover, but in the near future, we will include more data sets as well. You can also collapse this window if you wish, or you can adjust the size of the window. Then, just to give you a quick example of, for example, let's say river floods. These are the return periods, the different layers for the return periods I mentioned just before. Then, in terms of functionality here, you can adjust by clicking on these three dots here. You can adjust, for example, the level of transparency between the different layers. You can overlay as many as you want from the same hazard type or a different one. And in addition to that, you can also just, if you want to know the value of a specific cell or specific area that you want to focus, and the legend does not provide you with enough detail, you can simply click on a specific pixel and get the value that is contained in that cell. And lastly, I want to mention that all of these, the data that are included in the data viewer can be downloaded and are described in this dedicated metadata page, where these are again split per hazard type and exposure. These are standardized metadata, and here on the left, you also have the link to the original dataset. How to download it? We do not provide the possibility to download the data directly from us, but instead we have the link to where the original data are. In this case, it's river floods. It's a river flood probabilistic hazard layer produced by the JRC. Again, we are very eager to hear from you, and we would like to hear your user feedback and which data you think we are missing, which data are the ones that you would be interested in using the most. So please let us know. And with that, I will pass on the floor to my colleague Sam. Sam.
Sure. Thanks for your presentation, Chris. I'll share my screen. All right. Can you see my slides? Oh, good. Well, thanks. My name is Samuel Röslin. I'm here today to present to you a little bit about lost data and the lost dashboard. But first of all, I thought I would give you a little bit of an overview and some kind of like discussing a little bit on why is it important to collect lost information. First of all, when we think about disaster loss, you know, we usually think about human, physical, and economic losses, but it's also important to consider the social and the environmental aspects, to be able to have this information as well collected as part of the lost data and the lost information. Now, why is it important to collect such lost data? Well, lost data can be used for multiple kind of like for multiple things. Obviously, you know, as part of risk modeling, this is helpful to kind of like model future losses to be able to help us with the planning as well. But information on losses, you know, are also helpful, for example, for disaster loss compensation. You know, like this is obviously for insurance market, but also to be able to have fair and efficient, for example, solidarity mechanism following an event. Disaster losses can also be used into disaster forensic to be able to better identify the causes, to better identify the loss drivers as well, you know, kind of like, and all of that to be able to kind of like focus on those disaster risk reduction actions. And finally, we have this disaster loss accounting, where, you know, we can kind of like use information of the losses over time to be able to kind of like see, and so the records of the different impacts to see how our measures and how our disaster risk reduction measure are kind of like effective, and what's the benefits of having them as well. Hopefully, you know, seeing the benefit and seeing a decrease in losses over time, and whenever those measures are put into place. Now, I just wanted to mention here as well that, and you will see that, you know, consistently across the risks that I have, that most of the time we're using this kind of like what we call NUTS, or the nomenclature of territorial units for statistics, which are produced by Eurostat, where you have this hierarchy of having, you know, kind of like you start from the countries, and then you have different kind of like region level. You will hear us a lot, you know, speaking about NUTS 2 and NUTS 3, which are basics and small region respectively. And one of the benefit of having, you know, this kind of like consistency with the Eurostat definition is that you can actually, you know, overlap and cross information from the risk data hub that we have with information that you have directly provided by Eurostat. So this is an example. For example, if you're interested, you know, on information in Spain, well, we can download data from the risk data hub, have information about the NUTS from the risk data hub, and then overlap this with information about the population, for example, from Eurostat, to be able to do your analysis and get the insights that are the most beneficial for you. Now, I mentioned this level of NUTS because this is like kind of like something that we have consistently across the platform, but we do have some project as well where, you know, we go a little bit at a lower level. In that example of the project, which was kind of like parts of external project, was to kind of actually collect loss information at local administrative unit for the Alicante province. So we have the ability as well to kind of like capture information at a more granular level, obviously given that the input data is also at a more granular level. And finally, before moving to the live demonstration, I just wanted to kind of like introduce this, which is this unique identifier per disaster events that we use within the Risk Data Hub, because we collect information and loss data from several sources and several stakeholders. And so there is this need to kind of like harmonize the data and also bring everything, you know, kind of like consistently attached to a particular event. So today, I don't want to go too much into the details, but I just want to kind of like give you a flavor a little bit of this event code that you will see on the platform, which is a composition of the hazards, of the country that we're using. Then we're also giving you the start date, and then we're giving you a number. So you need to know that at the moment we're kind of like there is a lot of work happening in the background, and we're in the process of reviewing all this loss section in the Risk Data Hub. So please bear with us. You know, you might see some major changes, I would say, in the coming months, and that's why currently the loss dashboard is still under beta version, because there will be some improvements regarding the different categories and the data that we are showing there. Now, before moving to the website, I just want to again kind of come up with these slides and with this information that my colleague already touched before. Is we follow this approach, you know, which is kind of like mainly what we call the UNDRR approach for the disaster risk, where we have this hazard and exposure that was presented to you by Chris just before, and then the vulnerability that was presented to you yesterday by my colleague Andrea, and all of that, you know, enables us to kind of like get the risk information. Now, again, as I mentioned before, right now we are actively working at reviewing the data for all of these components, you know, the hazard, exposure, and the vulnerability. And once everything is kind of like up to date, we'll be able to kind of like review the computation of the risk as well. So please bear with us with that, but it's coming. And you know, on top of those kind of like three components, which are kind of like getting into the risk, there is also this disaster loss data which comes on top of it. And now we'll kind of actually look at the website, and I'll show you how you can actually access disaster loss data and how you can get information from the DRMKC Risk Data Hub websites. So I'll switch to my browser. So this is the landing page that you'll see when you kind of like just tap Risk Data Hub, you know, on a search engine. You will see the different modules. And again, those modules are kind of like aligned a little bit on those kind of like different components. So as my colleague Christos mentioned before, if you're interested to have information about hazard and exposure, at the moment, the way we kind of like distribute this data is by going to the data viewer or the geospatial web services. So this is the place for you to access information about the hazards and the exposure. If you want to get information about vulnerability, information, you know, in terms of dashboards and insights and kind of graphs, you can go to this section about the vulnerability. And I'll leave you to kind of have a look at the presentation that Andrea did yesterday if you want to get more information and more details about this part. But I wanted to mention that if you want to get and access vulnerability data on a more technical basis, I would say, you're also able to access this data via the Risk Data Hub API. And looking at this page, you can contact us and you can get an API key, and you will be able to get information for the vulnerability data through the Risk Data Hub API. And this will ensure that you always get latest data, because whenever you have an update, you know, whenever we have an update, will push it directly through the API. And now finally, so after having all this information about the hazard exposure and the vulnerability for the loss data, again, you have this possibility to get the loss data directly via the API. So you can apply to get an API key and get the loss data from us directly through the API. Now, again, I would like to mention that at this moment, we're kind of like heavily working kind of like on aligning and working a lot in the background. So the loss data here is still given at the NUTS version from 2013, but we are actively working at transitioning to kind of like NUTS 2021. So this is if you want to get access to loss data, kind of like getting kind of like pretty much the raw data and having access to the direct data, but you also have the possibility to kind of like see this data that we produce for you in modules and dashboards. So again, I don't want to dwell too much on this part here because we'll review the actual dashboard and we'll review the actual loss module very soon. But just to give you a first idea of a little bit in the direction that we are going. So on the loss section, you have this module and this dashboard. And if you click on the dashboard, you will end up on this dashboard here. So it's a little bit similar to the vulnerability dashboard that you saw yesterday, where you have 2 pages. So I'd like to mention that, so it's still in beta version, and you have 2 pages. The first one, which enables you to give you an overview. Again, we are considering here Europe-wide level for different countries. So this page here is set up by default to be at a country level, just to get you an overview. And this is, for example, where you can kind of like select your loss period. Here, for example, I want to see all the losses from 2000 to 2022. You can select different hazards and different hazard categories. So here again, I don't want to dwell too much here because we're going to change a little bit the naming of some of the hazard category and some of the hazard, because we're trying to get aligned, we're trying to get aligned with what is being done as well by other stakeholders. And so, for example, here we're going to kind of like try to get more aligned with what MDAT is doing. And you have the possibilities in terms of the indicator to either kind of like have a look at economic impact or the impact on population, which we then divide, into fatalities, people affected, or people injured. And yeah, you can see that on a page, get your information, get your insight for your specific hazard, for your specific assets that you want to see, and get an overview, as the page says, of what's happening for your time period of interest. Now, the second page of the loss dashboard is what we call a country profile, because on this country profile is where you're actually able to see a little bit more details for each of the countries. And here you will have to specify which country of interest, of which countries of interest to you. So again, here, like you can select the year, you can select your hazard category, and then you can select the hazard of interest. So here, for example, I want to see, which are the information for earthquake, landslides, and river flood, for example, in Italy. So I selected those 3 hazards. I want to see the economic impact. I want to select all the assets available. And then I selected my country, Italy. Now, to be able to see what you have on the map here, you first need to kind of like select your country, Italy, and then you select the level of the NUTS that you want to have. So we can do it live, for example, if you say, okay, I'm interested rather to see information at a NUTS 2 level. So you can go here. You will have, for the NUTS 2 level to be shown on the map, you will have to go here and then select all if you want to see all the regions that have been affected by, or where we have lost data for the hazards, that you selected. But what you can do as well, you can select just one region of interest if you want to see, if you know exactly which region you want to kind of like have information for. But let's say we just want to explore everything, you know, and then you're able to kind of actually see at the region, which region it is. You will get the NUTS code, the corresponding NUTS code. And you will get information as well, a little bit more detailed with the event ID for the risk data hub, as well as information on which hazard is it related to, and then the related impact. Now, keep in mind, as I said, this is a beta version, and we are actively currently working on reviewing the event ID for the risk data hub, as well as kind of like moving everything to NUTS 2021. So there will be some changes very soon here. So, you know, just for you to be aware of that. But that's pretty much about the loss dashboard and what you can get from the risk data hub. So when you go on the page, just before giving back the floor to my colleague, I just wanted to mention a little bit something. If there are more technical people interested a little bit to know a little bit more about the detail, I wanted to mention the risk data library, especially the risk data library standard, where you can see again those kind of like, you know, those blocks where you have the hazards, the exposure, the vulnerability, and the loss. And the risk data hub is trying as much as we can to kind of like be aligned with information on these risk data library standards. So as the name says, you know, like here, colleagues from the risk data library standards are trying to kind of like give something which is consistent, you know, across different stakeholders to ensure that then like when we speak about hazard, exposure, vulnerability, and the losses, that the definition are kind of like same or common or very similar. And finally, because I touched on it, especially for the hazard classification, I also want to kind of like highlight the work that's been done by MDAT. And very soon you will see that our hazard on the risk data hub will actually be mapped to the MDAT classification system, which is self-relies on the work that was done by IRDR in 2014. And you will see a full kind of like seamless integration, I would say, between the hazard information that we have on the risk data hub and the classification glossary that you have right now on MDAT. So I think that might be useful as well, you know, if you're familiar with the kind of like MDAT data, and we know this is something that is widely used to be able to access disaster loss information. Well, this is something that you will have consistently see those groups, subgroups, and type of hazards on products that are developed by the risk data hub. Okay, and with that, I'll give the floor back to my colleagues. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all three of you. I've got already the first congratulations, I have to say, and some questions. The first question probably is one to Christos. The question is the data availability. Are you providing the data with cost agreement, or are they free?
No. Everything is open, and you can get the data directly from the links we provide on the metadata pages, or if you want to use our geospatial web services, this is also for free. Anyone can access it. There is no limit or barrier behind that. Okay.
And the second part of the question is were related to the results from external projects. If an external project utilizes the data provided by GRC and proceeds with the results, should this project inform you? And are you able to present the results on the website or in the context of the website? Maybe Gustav, you're the one to answer this.
Yeah, I was gonna say it depends. It's not an easy answer. Well, it is an easy answer because you can basically do what you want with the data because it's open, it's open access, so you can deal with data as you want. We would very much like to know what you do with the data. It's very good for us. We learn things as well by doing that. Some projects who have used our data are published on our platform in hosted projects. Others are not. It depends if they fit into basically our structure as well as the purpose. If it's something that we think it's useful to share as methodology, or they do something with our data which is amazing and we need to show it to the world. We'd like to show it. But it depends. It depends. So the answer is just to say sometimes yes, sometimes not. But you don't have to tell us if you don't want to. You don't have to host it in us if you don't want to. That's fine. So it's no worries.
Okay. Another question, and I'm not sure who to answer because I think it's referring more to what has been presented yesterday on the social vulnerabilities of certain groups, which with regard to factors such as inequity, discrimination, blah, 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 how this is analyzed.
Yeah, that's no problem. I'm also working on that part of the project generally. So
Yeah.
No. So I mean, there are no direct indicators on if you look at the keywords there. At the same time, for example, we have social participation, which is a sub-dimension of our index, because we have the social dimension is addressed in the vulnerability index. So in the social participation, we have, for example, risk of social exclusion, which probably goes to what the person asking the question is talking about. There's also economic inequality, which is something else, but it's basically on economics. There's another dimension and indicator which could be relevant, which is actually the quality of regional government, because that's actually an index in itself, which we use as indicator. And it also actually, when they produce it indexed itself, it's Gothenburg University, European-wide coverage. They also include in that index, for example, impartiality in access to education and also access to healthcare services. So that I think those addresses partly what they're saying. I will also just mention that once we start our next round of reviews, because we review the vulnerability indicators and index yearly. Once we start that, one of the big topics which will come up this year or at the end of this year will for sure be vulnerable groups in general. So we want to put a focus on that part of it. We address it through some proxies at the moment, but you might want to focus a bit further on that because I think it's very relevant, obviously, for vulnerability. So I think that addresses the question.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, with what you have said before on transparency and openness, I assume every kind of data you use or every indicator or index you use, there is a description of what is included and what the shortcomings are in whatever scientific paper.
Everything is there. If you go to the vulnerability part on dashboard, specifically on the first page of it, you're gonna see a couple of links, which you might have to right click and open a new window because of some limitations on the platform at the moment. But if you go there, you will see the complete list of indicators and what they do, what they mean, in which dimension they are, and where they come from, of course, the source, and also the rationale for why we include it there. So everything is there, and you can go and make a deep dive into those, and you will see some things. But so everything is there. Yes.
I got a third question. Is the risk data hub open to cities in Turkey? I'm not sure how to interpret the question. I mean, access, it should be provided worldwide, maybe not from all parts of China, but the rest should be accessible. The data coverage is mainly Europe at the moment. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if that the question itself, I can just comment quickly on the question, because as you say, exactly, it's obviously it's based on Europe for the moment, and that's what we work on. We have done certain things on Turkey in the past for hosted projects more than anything else, which included Turkey in their data. It is often a question for us about data availability. So, I mean, we might be able to find hazard and exposure data, but where we will struggle normally is with the vulnerability data, to have a good coverage, not too many missing data points, because that makes it unreliable for us when we compute the vulnerability. But so that's why I mean, Turkey is there. We have now 3 regions in our system, but currently there's a bit too much missing data to include it as on the platform.
Country.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thomas, can we move to the Slido questions? And I have one more question why people can vote. Yeah, we have one question that is relevant for the further development on the Risk Data Hub in terms of, based on what you have seen, what do you think is missing, what could be useful in your work? And while you can type in your answers, I have a question to Samuel. Because you have been showing us the data for the flood risks. And my question is that linked somehow to the data reported by the member states in accordance to the floods directive, or is that based on the list flood model by GRC, or both?
Actually, Gustav is in a better place to
Or maybe
reply to
Gustav,
that, so
sorry,
I'll give
yeah.
the floor to Gustav.
Yeah, or I was actually gonna jump over to Christus for the source of the data through EFAS, but no, I don't think it's based on the flood directive. We are of course aware of that, but we don't have that data at the moment from the flood directive reporting in member states.
Okay.
But the source of the data, I think it's from the GRC exactly. So it's from EFAS basically.
Okay. Okay. Because I know that the assessment of the second cycle plans already shows that there has been a huge improvement, and most member states have the information as well available on GIS systems. That could be merged because yeah, maybe just an idea.
I think that's a very interesting idea. Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. We agree.
Yeah. Now we can take that forward bilateral, because I know there is also from autumn onwards a new development of the reporting guidance for the member states, and maybe there are some links of how this information should be reported so that you can make use of it. Yeah. The thing is that there is only for the medium floods at the moment with the 100 years probability a common standard, and the rest is between 10 years and 90 years for the high probability, and between 200 and 5,000 years for the low probability. So yeah, you could get quite a diverse picture. Yeah. Yeah. The detailed infrastructure and potential classification to green, blue, gray infrastructure could be added to the layers, I think so. Information at municipality level. Yeah, I think you said something that's the plan for the future, that you go below the NUTS 3. Do I remember that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think specifically flash floods is not included at the moment, right?
Yeah.
Christos, we don't have it now. So that might be an issue, but the flood layer should be quite detailed. Yeah, there's no vulnerability data at that level for us. So this is a limitation for sure.
Okay, Thomas, can we go to the next question so we get the feedback, please?
Maybe just quickly on this one, if people have information at municipality level that are willing to kind of like share, or, they need to discuss something with the team, that's something where we can assess as well, and kind of like, that we have hosted project like the one that I showed for the loss as the Alicante one, where we have more information at a detail level. Usually it's, technically it's possible. We can do it technically. It's mostly about getting the data itself. So if people comes to us and tell us we have lost data, at a more granular level, well, we can discuss together. We can give you some guidance, and then you can have more in-depth discussion about how do we show that and what do we do with this data? How do we link it with the platform or not? All this kind of discussion. But usually it's driven by the data itself, the level of the granularity of the data. In the first place.
So if a region wants to do that, they just go via the functional email address or contact one of you directly. Okay. On the slider, we have the question, can disaster loss data help you in your work? If so, how do you plan to use the information from historical loss data? Yeah, so people can actively put their comments in here.
And maybe here I would like to mention as well that if you have, answer to those questions, and you'd like to take some time to think a little bit about it, please feel free to kind of like reply to those questions to the functional mailbox. We're happy to hear your feedback, even after the presentation in a couple of days, even in a couple of weeks, because your feedback enables us to grow and to kind of like, as Krista says, to kind of like develop tools and products that are better suited for your need pretty much. So thanks for that.
Yeah. And you are also free to share the recording and the slides with your colleagues who have not been available today because they probably left for Easter break already. We put everything on YouTube. We will share the link with the thank you email, and feel free to spread the things around. Yeah, it's not hidden information what we are doing here. On that question, I know that some countries or regions are using this kind of historical loss data for cost-benefit assessments of flood protection measures. I've seen that already in the second cycle. So it's definitely something that is very, very well welcomed. And what I appreciate here is that it's centralized and you don't have to go through hundreds of web pages in different languages to find things. Okay, and then maybe there's one more question in the poll, just to vote. Which component related to disaster risk is the most important to support you? Yesterday, I know I have the results a bit in mind, so please go ahead and vote. Yeah, in the meantime, are there any other questions there's nothing I see in the chat or in the question and answer session. But maybe it's Friday afternoon, and at least in my place it's sunny, so everybody wants to get out, which I can understand. Okay, having said that, and you still can use the poll. I'm sharing now my slide, if my last slide, before, if it works, because we are always very keen to get your feedback on the event in general. So please send us your feedback here. It can be right now, it can be on Monday, it can be after Easter. We are happy because it makes us also better in developing the next events. I have to say a very big thank you to the colleagues from GRC in giving us very clear presentations and interesting content. That's the most important thing. I have to say what you have developed is a big step forward for making adaptation processes in Europe better and more scientific based. So thank you for that. And Gustav, do you want to say anything or?
Oh, I would, with the risk of repeating ourselves several times, please get in touch with us. Anything you want to criticize or anything else you want us to improve or make better, or just to tell us that everything is good. So thank you very much for hosting this couple of seminars. It's very useful for us as well. And I mean, part of our mission is to reach out member states and to regions. So this is something which we've been working on a lot over the last year, and we're trying to get more direct contact to see the needs and also to identify what the specific regions or member states, what they need to how what kind of approach they need to, so they can do the adaptation basically.
Yeah.
What actions can be taken. That is very important to understand for us. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a great Easter break, most of you at least. And thanks for being available. Ciao.